Well, hello and welcome to everyone joining us for this X Talks webinar. Today's talk is entitled The Rise of the Site, How to Empower Efficient Clinical Study Execution. My name is Corey Stanton and I'll be your X Talks host for this event. Today's presentation runs for approximately 60 minutes and the webinar includes an interactive Q&A session at the end. To make the most of this session, feel free to submit questions and comments for our speaker throughout the presentation and we'll try to attend to as many as possible. If you're joining us via GoToWebinar, you can use the questions chat box, which is located in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you require any assistance, please don't hesitate to contact me by sending a message using this very same chat box. And if you're viewing this presentation from our LinkedIn Live event, you can submit your questions using the comments tab on LinkedIn. Please note that all audience members are in listen-only mode and that this event will be recorded and made available for streaming to those who registered on xtalks.com. At this point, I'd like to thank Creo, who developed the content for this presentation. Creo is an e-clinical solution provider delivering innovative data capture technology for sites, sponsors, and CROs. As the industry's leading e-source provider, Creo's unique architecture enables a single point of data capture that embeds quality and transparency at the point of entry and creates significant downstream efficiencies. Finally, one system, one source. And now let's take a moment to meet our featured speaker for today, Jonathan Andrus, co-CEO of Creo. With over 25 years of experience, Jonathan has focused on customer success, sales, marketing, compliance, finance, and HR. He drives innovation in clinical trials, aiming to reduce site burden and transform data management. A recognized thought leader, Jonathan has chaired the Society for Clinical Data Management twice and serves as its treasurer. He holds bachelor's and master's degrees from Temple University and is a certified quality auditor and clinical data manager. And now, without any further ado, I'd like to hand the mic over to Jonathan to kick off the presentation. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Corey. Good to be with everyone here today. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be joining from. As Corey said, I'm going to be talking about the rise of the site and really how to empower efficient and effective clinical study execution. And you might be saying to yourself, what is someone who is twice chaired the Society for Clinical Data Management, who is a certified clinical data manager, talking about sites? And I will admit to you that I am a bit of a convert along the pathway to where I am here today. And I say that with quite a level of enthusiasm because one of the things that I've been on a mission to do is to bring the voice of the site, to bring the voice of the patient, especially to the likes of people in data management and data science and other functions. And I say all that to say that actually part of what I'm presenting here today, I actually presented part of it during a bit of a debate, if you will, as far as what the crystal ball will tell us over the next 3 to 5 years as far as how things are changing and evolving. I presented that at the Society for Clinical Data Management's actual annual conference just about 4 or 6 weeks ago in Boston, in front of a predominantly all data science and data management group. And I will say I lost the debate. I didn't come in first, but that's okay. But part of it is that it's all about planting seeds along the way and making sure that people in all aspects of the continuum of clinical research understand the importance of the research site. And that's the primary focus here today is how the world of sites is changing. What does that mean to us? So here today, we're going to talk about really the status quo and a bit of the crystal ball prediction. The other thing we're going to kind of delve into is really what are the 4 signs that we see? And there's more than this, but for sake of brevity, we're going to look at 4 signs that sites are actually empowering clinical study execution. And then, of course, we're going to wrap up a bit with really how can then Creo support and further enable sites, while I think importantly at the same time, providing solutions for sponsors too. At the end of the day, it's all about getting data, right, from these sites, to sponsors to support submissions, to support claims, to support whatever the end goal is with the particular clinical research activity that's being carried out, and to do so in a way that helps reduce administrative burden, helps do those things that are beneficial to all parties. But again, the focus today really being that of the site. So before we jump into the actual content, Corey, I wondered if you could throw up a quick poll for us here. I just wanted to know of those of you who have been able to join us here today, just curious to know what type of organization that you're affiliated with. I believe the poll is in progress. Part of this is just for my own edification, that as we discuss things here today, I kind of know a bit of who the audience is as I talk about things. As we go through the actual didactic slide content today. I also want to point out, as Corey did as well, but just to reinforce, please feel free to use the Q&A portion of the GoToMeeting to be asking questions throughout. We have someone moderating that, so as we move through the content here today, we can be prepared that after I get through the presentation portion of this, we can address questions.
Yes, I'm just going to chime in here. Sorry, Jonathan, I was just going to chime in here to mention about the poll as well, that for those of you who are voting on it now, thank you so much. To those of you who haven't voted yet, you can respond to this poll in real time. You can click on any of the answers, and all you have to do is just hit the submit button. And as Jonathan mentioned, we're just looking to get a sense of the type of organization that you're affiliated with. And I'll just go ahead and read out those options while we're collecting our votes. It's a clinical research site and all of its variants, a pharmaceutical or a biotech company, you're a CRO or a technology vendor or something other. And it looks like we do have a majority vote from our audience in. If you hadn't had a chance to vote yet, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in just about 10 seconds. So make sure you log that vote in now. And then we'll just take a quick look at those results, Jonathan, before we continue on.
We are accepting no absentee ballots or mail-in ballots or anything.
That's right.
Just strictly polling right now.
Pure polling, no other part of the process. I'm going to close the poll right now, and let's take a quick look at those results. So we've got 33% of our audience has come in mentioning that they're affiliated with a clinical research site and all of its variants. 25%, a quarter here, pharmaceutical or biotech company. No votes in for CRO, and our slight majority here at 38%, technology vendor, and 4% have come in at other. So Jonathan, I'm going to send things back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. So in essence, 58% are representing really, in essence, a lot of the core focus of this particular presentation. I mean, no offense to the tech vendors. Of course, I'm one of them, so I'm kind of dissing myself. But, you know, a lot of this is going to be about how sites and sponsors and CROs, quite frankly, should and can work together effectively. So go ahead, Corey. Yes, thank you. So, you know, in terms of breaking the status quo, of course, this has been said frequently, and I don't mean to be a bit of a broken record with this, but obviously we're at a pivotal moment in our history. You know, I've been at this for 28 years. Yes, I was 5 years old when I started in industry, but 28 years ago, and I fast forward to today, so from 1996 to 2024, honestly, things haven't changed all that dramatically much. When I first entered industry, I started as a clinical data coordinator, working on what I thought was incredible technology, a fax-based data collection tool that collected data from sites that didn't require 3-part NCR, and I thought it was just, you know, just incredible. You know, but still today, right, a lot of us moved to EDC, and then that burden kind of shifted back to the sites for them to actually do all the entry, as opposed to the traditional paper-based approach where a lot of the entry of data into clinical systems was done in back office locations. So in a lot of ways, we shifted responsibilities back onto these poor sites that were already drowning in a lot of other activities, especially, right, taking care of the patients and the subjects in which they're trying to recruit and screen and participants in the studies. But, you know, we really are at a pivotal moment. And so you know, frankly, with some of these really rigid, outdated processes that in a lot of ways hinder us to adapt to different kinds of advancements and really, in essence, really trapping us in what amounts to being a state of paralysis. And like I said, you know, really practices haven't changed that much in that quarter century plus, with sites really shouldering more and more burdens all the time. So, you know, this is one of the slides that I talked about in that kind of debate just a handful of weeks ago. And to me, one of the biggest opportunities, I say the next 5 years, but honestly, there's a lot of things going on right now, and we're going to talk about them here today, is that the role of individual sites and networks of sites or federations of sites or all the other variants. And that was kind of why I said clinical research sites and all of its other variants, because there's lots of different flavors right now to the clinical research site paradigm. It's going to continue to undergo significant transformation and hopefully evolving to delivering data directly from site-controlled managed systems that help enhance patient recruitment. They help streamline site identification. And again, these networks, these sites are going to play a continuous and continually evolving crucial role in really helping to source studies by really pulling from their federation of sites, their network of sites together, and offer more options really for what I view as more efficient study management. So that's kind of back to my crystal ball in the creepy looking hand opportunity. And on our next slide, we'll talk here about this quote from Dr. Vinod of Monash. And it struck me as I was looking for taking little steps. Every little step forward we take really counts, because the greatest mistake is really to sit by and do absolutely nothing, because you can only do a little. And in essence, as I mentioned before, even in my role at SCDM of planting these seeds along the way to change hearts and minds for how we should be carrying out clinical research. We can go to the next slide. So in terms of the 4 signs, we're going to jump right into that and start talking about those here on the next slide. And in essence, the signs that sites are empowering clinical study execution. Again, by no means is this an exhaustive list whatsoever, but obviously from on the left quadrant, if you will, is the growth of the site networks and the federation of sites, and how a lot of them are working together to provide a federation, a network of sites in order to provide good quality research-driven research sites to carry out study activities. Another area is the emergence of sole sourcing of trials, at least what we're seeing here at CREO, and we're gonna dive into that in more detail as well. I love that image because I know there at the bottom left is that sites and even patients for that matter are drowning in technology. A lot of the sponsor organizations and CROs, right, want to be able to ship and send different technology and tools to sites. And in a lot of ways, right, their intentions are pure, but in other respects, sites are just drowning in that technology. Another part is the key crucial role that sites play in really driving diversity in clinical trials. And again, we'll hone in on that as well. So our first trend, I wanted to point out as well, and Corey, maybe you can also direct people to this too. I'm going to make some references to some statistics and some percentages, and in fact, our very first one is here on the screen in terms of kind of financial investment and the eye towards sites and the consolidation of sites and what's going on there. But as a part of this, we have an ebook for those of you attending this particular webinar. And Corey, if you could help just with the logistics or the technical aspects of how people can access. So I have a link to things there at the bottom, but this is actually taken from the ebook that is available to you.
Yeah, as Jonathan mentioned, we do have the CREO ebook attached here to the GoToWebinar interface. I've just sent a little reminder in the chat box to the audience as well. You can access this ebook. It's just available under the handouts tab, and it's a PDF there labeled CREO ebook 2023. Grab that, download it. Jonathan's going to be making reference to it throughout the presentation today. Yep. Back to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Corey, for telling the technical connect to it. So in essence, as a part of my prediction over the next 3 to 5 years, I predict that continued market saturation will continue to occur. We're already seeing it right now with what I would describe as mega networks beginning to emerge. Part of that is financial investment that's occurring with private equity and other organizations, and I'm not going to get into the good, the bad, and the perspectives on that, but they are driving consolidation, and it's a reality of where things are right now. And for those reasons, my prediction is that over the next period of time, we could end up with, a relative handful of some large mega networks that have access to, at least here in the United States, potentially 70 to 80% of potential active investigators in the US, and of course some portion of the rest of the world, as we see expansion of some of these networks throughout all parts of the globe. Again, that particular trend, that particular site is further elucidated in the ebook, and certainly a shout out to my colleague, Raymond Nemuzo here at CREO, as well as a partner of his that worked with him on the ebook, Colin Scholes, as well, with some of the data behind these things, but certainly a trend that we see occurring. Our next trend, trend number 2, is all around sole sourcing of trials. And so even here within CREO, what we're beginning to see is that some of these larger sites and federations of sites and site networks are beginning to sole source studies. So sponsors are coming to them, and then in turn they are coming to us and saying, hey, we are going to be the sole set of sites in a given study. We would love to use the CREO application in order to drive data through the entire system without the need for any other secondary or tertiary application for us to enter and capture data into. And so, this prediction here is that in terms of sole sourcing, these networks will continue to potentially look a little bit like, or smell a little bit like, walk a little bit like a contract research organization, depending on the different services that they begin to start offering, or that CROs themselves will acquire more networks. And of course, we do see that occurring now too. And we see more and more of that transpiring. And of course, in essence, then offering full end-to-end services, and in fact, what I would kind of term a next-gen contract research or clinical research organizations. There on the right side, from BPOs and IROs, and those might be acronyms that maybe you're not overly familiar with, but business processing organizations or integrated research organizations certainly gives a new twist to site networks. In this case, right, they're actually going in and working within an academic medical center or a particular healthcare practice that maybe doesn't have experience in clinical research, or an AMC that's very busy doing other types of non-commercial type research, or just don't have the wherewithal, both in terms of the staff and the resources to be able to do that. And so these IROs, for example, are essentially landing in these locations and running studies as a part of that, trend. The other part is the driving of diversity. So networks will partner with and even potentially acquire different types of variants, right? Home healthcare, HHCs, mobile research nursing, MRNs, non-traditional research or satellite sites, so pharmacies, meta sites, and healthcare practices too. I mean, in the FDA's latest guidance on diversity in clinical trials, it's all about, right, being able to use a variety of, and that's what I mean when I talk about diversity in clinical trials, right? Giving optionality to patients to be able to engage and enroll and then further on engage in clinical research in a way that ensures and assures how data can be collected in a compliant, efficient, and non-time consuming way for the patient themselves, right? If I had to drive in every day to Philadelphia, I live here in Pennsylvania, if I had to drive into Philadelphia to participate in a clinical research study, as opposed to being able to go to a local facility that maybe could be, or even have a mobile research nurse or home healthcare coming to my home here to carry out different aspects of that study, that's absolutely another trend that certainly, I'll even talk from a CREO perspective, we saw a very large uptick in that throughout 2024 in terms of new customers joining us, coming into the CREO family of connected research sites. Also centralized recruitment, right? And so this approach will begin to encompass some of that centralized and streamlined recruitment, including the acquisition of different solutions that could also be standalone. So just again, another trend here too that we certainly see, talked about in the ebook, but also in real life, seeing happening here, certainly throughout 24, just from our own Creo myopic perspective too. Let's look at trend 3. So in trend 3, drowning in tech, right? Let's start on the right-hand side, and then I'll come back to the API discussion. But it's essentially, and I know I'm being somewhat melodramatic with this, but sites are drowning in sponsor-provided technology. Again, every study that you, in essence, you really have to consider them to be kind of single-use technology, right? If I'm working on this particular protocol, I might receive this particular device or this particular piece of equipment or this particular piece of technology that I have to use, but again, only for that one study and that one study only. And so, in my opinion, from a trend perspective, in order to succeed, sites and site networks themselves have to embrace their own technology to run all aspects of their growing business. So whether they're a home healthcare provider or a mobile research nursing facility or even a retail pharmacy, using technology like Creo is going to help them manage the work of running clinical research at their particular site. So purely relying on kind of single-use technologies for that is just not going to work in terms of them of sites and the variance of sites being able to manage that without their own systems in place. And so these systems, right, then in turn have to be leveraged to help minimize the administrative burden, and certainly manual recapture in other systems is a part of that. We're going to talk here after some of these trends about how Creo can help with that. Sites then need to then be able to harness those systems for the benefit of sponsors, right? So the point of entry quality, they can drive efficient and less costly monitoring. Tools like Creo allow for remote monitoring to occur on the data being collected, which again, nothing against CRAs and monitors, but the less amount of time that they have to spend on site at a particular research site, the better off, just because when they do come on site, they can really focus on the more meaty and important aspects of the monitoring. And of course, also helps to drive data management to data science. And what I mean by that is getting away from the kind of in the weeds staring and comparing between a source system and an EDC system, making sure that things have been properly retranscribed from system to system, and really allowing the evolution to data science is what I talk about all the time, and allowing clinical data scientists to apply kind of overarching analytics, trends, looking for outliers, really providing a true clinical data science service to other research practitioners in the process. And so there at the very bottom, and apologize for the smallness of that, but sites and site networks and other federated sites that really, again, my trend prediction is that as they implement and bring these platforms into play, that they will truly become a formidable competitor to traditional CROs that have come to rely on a lot more manual processes and duplication and inefficiencies with fragmented and a lot of times paper-driven research sites. Let's take a look at trend 4. So diversity-driven clinical trials. We here at Creo are very much passionate about this topic. And in fact, we have our own internal working group that has partnered with a variety of different organizations. In fact, we have a team headed out here, I think, the end of this week, maybe today or tomorrow, to Black women in clinical research. But as a part of this, Creo is all about equipping and enabling sites to be able to embrace technology and reduce some of that burden to drive diversity in socioeconomic, and ethnicity and age and mobility, as far as being able to equip mobile research nursing and home healthcare, gender and sexual identity, location, both in terms of home, local HCPs, hospitals, virtual. And certainly this is extremely, extremely critical in today's clinical trial world where, we are mandated, right, to include diverse patient populations to help ensure diverse representation in clinical trials. And so the reason why, or the connection to CREO is that, equipping these various players who are focused on equipping and enabling diverse patient populations is to make sure that if they are, for example, a satellite site to a traditional brick and mortar research site, that as a PI, I have oversight over whomever is tasked with doing different activities in order to enable a diverse patient population. So for example, if the sponsor contracts with a home healthcare or a mobile research nursing organization that is there to supplement myself as a PI at my site, having them both entering data into CREO, both me as the PI at my site, as well as the mobile research nursing or home healthcare that might be going out, also entering data into the same CREO eSource application, enables me as the PI to have the oversight I need to ensure protocol compliance and all of that. Let's head to the next slide, Corey. So how can CREO really help support and further enable sites while at the same time providing some of those solutions and some of the data, well, all of the data that's needed for sponsors? So part of this is that the use of CREO's eSource capabilities really helps to standardize data collection, helps reduce protocol deviations. Through our eSource, we're taking the protocol itself, whether ourselves or the sites themselves, and putting in all the necessary edit checks, logic, all the bells and whistles in order to ensure that regardless of who's interacting with the source, that it is so intuitive and it is so lockstep with the requirements of the protocol that it helps improve that endpoint data accuracy. And so this approach also helps to boost CRA productivity because it really does help enable more efficient remote monitoring and can help reduce some of the interim monitoring visits by significant percentages. And on our next slide, we're going to talk here about just a quick overview of who CREO is, which I know we kind of just jumped right into the content and the material. And Corey did touch a little bit on who CREO is, but we've been around now for 8 years. And in that time, we've been involved with over 6,000 research protocols. We have experience in over 27 countries, and we've been involved and have had over 3 million patients worth of data coming through our system. We've worked with over 800 different sponsors, and Corey mentioned this before, but we like to consider this to be really one system, one source. So serving the needs first and foremost of sites and enabling sites, while at the same time providing a source and a system for sponsors and CROs to effectively carry out the necessary work that they have. I'm not going to read through all of the different platform features, but just to touch on some of the key ones, certainly electronic source, and a variety of different APIs that feed data into the system, as well as financial management. I talked before about the importance of the fact that sites and site networks and other organizations as they grow need to have a platform and a solution that allows them to manage all facets of their business. And of course, part of that is the financial management piece of the business too. And CREO very much provides the ability for sites to manage budgets based on their clinical trial agreements, et cetera. Let's head to the next slide. So as a site-centric approach and CREO's eSource, we really are the pioneers in site-centric eSource technology with a true aim at optimizing operational efficiency. Certainly benefits for a variety of stakeholders, certainly for sites in streamlining the workflows and enabling them to, again, focus on the critical part, which is focusing on the patients and participants in the critical research that they're carrying out. And of course, there's many benefits, but chief among them, and of course, I gravitate towards data and data quality, but certainly improved data quality and faster capture of data providing some of those real-time insights to sponsors, which takes us to the next, which is there for the benefits for sponsors is enhanced study efficiency and overall improved data quality, which then enables faster study execution and a more cost-effective method and approach for carrying those things out too. And of course, some of the mutual advantages is it helps facilitate site adoption, getting them up rapidly into the study itself. And of course, as a sponsor, as I look at sites who have kind of gone out on their own, whether I be a site or a network or a mobile research nurse, PCM, at home kinds of activities, it really helps support efficient trials and enhanced monitoring activities as well, and allows external monitors and CRAs to have views into those data. So in terms of using CREO to empower sites, we drive site and sponsor and CRO efficiencies. So from a higher enrollment perspective, helping and enabling faster study startup, improved quality, faster time to capturing of data, and again, other downstream systems, as well as monitoring productivity. And we're gonna actually look here on the next slide at a bit of a drill down into a grid. And in this grid, and again, I know it's somewhat small to see, but now I will say that this information is not in the ebook. We do have a case study and some information available on our website that these data are derived from. So this was based on a 2.5-year long global phase 3 study that had over 140 sites. I'm reading you down in the source section, but 56 of those sites opted to use CREO eSource and 84 opted not to use that. So that's that comparison between the two. So from a higher enrollment standpoint, again, you can see there yourself, but when comparing those CREO enabled sites versus the non-CREO enabled sites, we clearly saw an increase in their abilities from an enrollment standpoint, from a faster study startup, from their time to first screening, really showed a 39% improvement between those sites, and of course, time to first enrollment in days. Improved quality, so when you looked at protocol deviations, kind of over top of the total enrolled patients, we saw, a decent improvement, 20+%. And of course, nearly a 50% decrease in patient dropout rates. Faster time to entry, so time to EDC entry was, in this case, in this particular study, a 90% increase between the CREO and non-CREO sites, and then monitoring productivity. So the number of monitoring pages per month really was able to be increased. So it doesn't mean that, again, as a CRO, I might look at this and look at that because a lot of those activities are a bit of my bread and butter as a contract research organization. But in the same hand, it allows me to utilize the resources that I have in a much more productive way. If I can have more CRAs and monitors carrying out things in a remote manner, I can better utilize those resources throughout a variety of different studies as well. So just some empirical proven benefits of CREO eSource. Again, this is available on our website. It's not in the ebook, but is available for further discussion and review. So from a one system, one source standpoint, I know I talked about that before. So there's a variety of different solutions that CREO offers, from publisher to eSource to reviewer. Of course, in this case, I'm not talking about our finance modules, eReg, and some of the other ones too. But in this case, really what it does is publisher, think of that as enabling the ability to build a central eSource template that also allows for pre-mapping to even electronic case report forms. This allows for the central management of amendments through versioning, and then it allows publication out to sites when ready. What's really unique about CREO is that if you did start off with a central source template and push that out to participating CREO sites in a given clinical trial, sites still then have the ability to further configure on top of the central template. And so that allows them to create specific configurable aspects that might be unique to their particular site outside of what's published at the broader central eSource template level. In addition, we have a variety of APIs that allows for the streamlining of data to flow between the Creo solution and other solutions as well. We also offer a Creo reviewer tool, so that's when sites save data or they upload PDF, or eSource transmits those data to reviewer. And so back when I talked about the abilities for sites and site networks to sole source studies, if, for example, a site network has been contracted by a sponsor to provide all of the sites for a given study, Creo can collect the data in the front-end eSource portion, which would include protected health information and other identifiable information. And then we have a reviewer tool where the Creo eSource data flows up to the reviewer tool in a de-identified manner and allows for the remote monitoring, data review, querying, medical coding to be offered as well, so that it really helps streamline the flow of the data from Creo eSource up to reviewer. And its value to you is, you know, on the publisher side, it really helps automate the protocol. It helps accelerate site startup. From an eSource perspective, as I mentioned before, it really embeds quality at the point of capture, and it helps to expedite entry of EDC data. We actually have identifiers on the eSource itself of fields that are required or necessary to be included in the EDC system, and so it really does help draw the eye, as myself as a clinical research coordinator at a site, to know what are the elements that are required within the downstream EDC system. The other thing too is, again, if you're using the Creo eSource to reviewer, it can also help eliminate double data entry across systems, because the Creo eSource and reviewer tool can act as that single source of data. And then reviewer, as I mentioned, right, helps implement centralized remote monitoring and reduces a lot of that cycle time. So Creo's EDC API, this is something that's a part of our roadmap. We're really, really excited about this. It will really embed mappings into the source template itself and enable sites to send data in bulk. So over time, as a part of our roadmap, we're taking, again, those C- fields, mapping those to the eCRF, and then using those codes to map to the eCRF database value. And it will allow there on the right-hand side, ultimately, the vision is with this EDC API is that this dashboard will display all the different pre-map procedures and records. The sites themselves can actually send data in either by selecting or in bulk. And then when source data changes, the system will actually requeue it and allow them to do that again. And the whole idea here is that understanding that sponsors have in many cases invested, you know, a considerable amount of time, effort, and energy into their EDC systems that they're using. And so recognizing that, right, we're really looking for solutions that will help further enable sites to be able to more programmatically move these data across to downstream systems. Another aspect as well is Creo's lab integration, and it really does provide a transformational workflow for sites and sponsors. And so, you know, the user themselves can send an eRec via a hyperlink, and in essence, those digital results, lab results, come back into Creo. There on the right-hand side of the screen, I know, again, it's a little tough to read, but ultimately, you know, we see improvements in protocol compliance and patient safety. And there you can see that as the data come in read-only, it is providing, you know, the different statuses. So whether it's high, out of range, et cetera, and then it's allowing the site themselves to report on the clinical significance aspects related to whether it's NCS, CS, and then any related commentary on that. And again, this is all about seeking ways and finding ways in which we can reduce the burden on sites in partnership and collaboration with sponsors as well. So, you know, working with and collaborating with the sponsor organizations to enable the central laboratory to be able to be integrated that way, to equip research sites that are involved in that particular protocol with the abilities to to have those data flow into the lab forms themselves in the Creo application. It will be, in my opinion, just already, we talked about it recently in we call it Creo's Customer Council, where we bring a number of our customers together on a regular basis to talk about our roadmap and things that are coming up. And there was a lot of excitement around the lab integration piece for sure. And Corey, we can go to the next. I touched on this before, but Creo Reviewer actually enables centralized remote monitoring. You're able to review all the study data across sites. And if I'm wearing my CRO or sponsor hat, it enables that CRO, that sponsor, to have 24/7 access to site data. It does allow for the creation of a review queue, and I can see if things have changed post. It also allows me not only to see data in the eSource forms themselves, but also anything that may have been uploaded as well. We do enable sites to redact and to do different things with uploaded files, so it really provides a rich set of data available through the reviewer tool. And there's some uses there, but remote monitoring and of course risk-based. You can do as-needed data reviews and really does help enable monitoring productivity, as I talked about before with that case study on the prior slides. Some real-time analytics. Creo also offers this through Looker and other tools. So we have customizable report suites and pre-scheduled distribution, and it really does help provide some keen insights into site behavior. Of course, in order to do this and support sites and site networks and all the different varieties of site types, it really requires world-class implementation and support. So, making sure that both in terms of training and design and any types of customization that might be needed, as well as even partnering with sponsor organizations and CROs to help enable sites too, so that if we work with a sponsor organization who wants to help equip sites with tools and technology like Creo, we can come alongside and really help enable that process to be done. Of course, done through and also providing with 24/7 support and other activities that Creo has long established and has a great team supporting all of that. Real quick on the therapeutic area expertise. Creo has hands in every therapeutic area, but this is just a quick snapshot of some of the big therapeutic areas for us and our footprint and experience in these arenas. Of course, this is highly attractive in terms of sponsor organizations looking for sites that have adopted and implemented Creo within their organizations, because it really does demonstrate that these sites take quality serious. These sites take the importance of tools and solutions like this to help drive their research operations. And so, as a sponsor looking for high performing, high throughput, high quality minded research sites, it certainly is an attractive thing for sponsors and CROs to look at from a Creo enabled research site perspective. Of course, operating, I mentioned before that, we have a footprint in a wide variety of countries, obviously ensuring that Creo has enterprise grade security and compliance. And I'm not going to read through all of this, but, making sure that these things are in place has been absolutely paramount and critical for us as we've grown as an organization too. And have increased our footprint globally, ensuring that we're compliant not only with US Food and Drug Administration rules and requirements, but also other ministries of health, GDPR, and all the other requisite requirements around the globe. So I wanted to end with a bit of a start. So as you start the journey along this pathway, I mentioned before that the quote from Dr. Vinod from Monash University about, every little step really matters. And part of that is, when it comes to modernizing our processes within clinical trials, it doesn't have to be a sprint. And so progress like provisioning and even equipping eSource to sites to help enable remote monitoring can be part of that starting of the journey. We see that happening with sponsor organizations today. Part of this gradual approach really helps demonstrate that sponsor commitment to helping reduce the burden on research sites. And it also helps earn their trust or buy-in for further enhancements. So I encourage you all, whether you're on the sponsor side, pharma, biotech, or on the site side, of really looking to further modernizing your approaches, whether it be through solutions like Creo, and looking for ways in which you can establish good quality systems to help manage your entire operations and ensure that the focus is really placed on that of the participant and the patient in the research process. So I appreciate your time here today. I did want to save just a little bit under 15 minutes or so for Q&A. Corey, I think you are back on the screen.
I'm here. Excellent. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Insightful presentation, Jonathan. We are now ready, as you mentioned, to begin the Q&A portion of our event. And as we do so, I invite the audience to continue sending their questions or comments. Please note, if we don't have time to get through your question or your comment today, the team will absolutely have a chance to follow up after the webinar. So as we continue to go through this Q&A session, please feel free to continue sending in while we're working through it. Just a reminder, if you're attending via GoToWebinar, please use the questions chat box. And for those of you watching on LinkedIn Live events, feel free to post your questions using the comments tab. We have already received quite a few questions here from the audience, so hopefully we'll be able to get through the majority of them before we wrap up our time here. Jonathan, this first question that's come in from the audience is asking if the sites that historically use Creo to enhance their site selection, are these sites historically, is it for a CRO or for a sponsor? Has Creo done something like that before, or is it more so up to the CRO or the sponsor to engage with Creo first and then roll out the sites from that point?
I'm actually just I'm reading the question too, just so I fully.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
I've seen it. I've seen it both ways, right? In terms of some sites or even some larger sites and site networks have come to us with a particular sponsor organization that, again, as I indicated even in some of the earlier slide content, that some of these sites, right, have the wherewithal and have the capabilities of really providing end-to-end site solutions for sponsor organizations. So some of them actually bring potential sponsors to Creo saying, hey, I'm going to be, or we're going to be the only sites on this particular study. Let's look at how we can use Creo for that entire continuum to provide data back to the sponsor, which is a huge win for me as a site and site network. It's a huge win for the sponsor. So we've seen that. On the flip side, we've also seen it done too, where sponsors come to us and say, hey, we're looking for some really high performing, high throughput, high quality sites that take technology and quality and all of those things really to heart. And we can help, broker some of those discussions and bring parties together in a way that helps drive both sides. So hopefully I'm answering that question, but I think I did.
Great. Thank you for that, Jonathan. Some more questions here that have come in from the audience. This next audience member was just curious how you see Creo using AI in the future, and I'm sure you use it a little bit right now with your tools, but maybe you could expand a bit on how you're using it now and how it can expand going forward.
I mean, AI, ML, machine learning, right? NLP, natural language processing. Their LLM, large language models, all sorts of terms are flying and floating around right now. Of course, when I wear my other hat on the Society for Clinical Data Management side, right, we talk a lot about these terms quite frequently. Here at Creo, our first foray into AI has really been equipping and enabling our customer support. We're actually now able to use those tools coupled with our help center and other tools to be able to enable our end users to be able to search through and look for information in the help guides and manuals. We're also exploring a variety of different things to help streamline the ways in which different study design activities and other activities like that can be done using some of the AI related tools. You know, and part of that is both in terms of you know, potentially some initial study design related things to help equip and enable that to be, you know, essentially potentially combing through a given research protocol and establishing a study design based off of that, or at least the initial structure or framework of it. So we're looking at a variety of different things, but today in terms of what we have in production is really focused more on supporting our end users and our customers through the use of AI tools like that. I will say even on our customer support live chat solution, we do have the ability, I guess you could question whether or not that's really AI, but I mean, there is a bit to it, I guess, in terms of, Corey, if you ask me a question in French Canadian, it would actually come up on my end in English, and I can respond back to you in English, and it would actually go back to you in French Canadian. So little things like that that are helping to enable and providing better support has been our focus, right? And that's really what it's been on. Again, I'll anchor back to enabling sites as much as we can. So that's been our focus for now, and certainly, you know, we'll be looking to expand further.
Great, excellent. Thank you for that. That's great. And so I'd like to just jump ahead to another question that we've got here. It was more of a clarification question from one of our audience members. They were just wondering the difference, if you could explain the difference between an FSP and an IRO, because I know sometimes these definitions can get all bundled up together.
Yeah, an FSP, again, I'm gonna lean on my definition. So forgive me if there's others on this that maybe disagree with that, but an FSP, a functional service provider, I view them in a classical way of that I am providing a specific function. That function might be clinical monitoring. That function might be data management. And I essentially provide those boots on the ground in a particular organization, a CRO, a sponsor, what have you, versus an IRO, which is an integrated research organization, which is more akin to what I was describing on that particular slide where we were talking about the different, you know, whether it be an AMC or I guess it was an academic medical center or university setting, right, where that IRO actually provides those functions. So in essence, it is a bit like a functional provider, but they're providing that particular set of functions for that location to run research operations. So it could be much more multifaceted in terms of, it could be a research coordinator, it might be a PI, it could be, you know, all, you know, the various technology and solutions that are kind of boxed together, packaged together, and dropped in that particular setting, if you will. And so that's the difference. So FSP is, in my mind, it's a particular function that is given to and is provided to a particular sponsor or CRO, versus an IRO where it's a bundling or a packaging together of various research professionals in order to run research at a given location that might not have the wherewithal, the time, the resources to be able to do those activities.
Great, excellent. Thank you for that, Jonathan. And your use of the words bundling and packaging together there actually serves as a nice segue to another question we got here from the audience. This audience member was asking about, you know, so with the consolidation of so many of these private research sites into networks, how can individual sites that, you know, I'm sure some still want to remain independent, how can they stay competitive against this consolidation?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'll speak in a very biased way, but, you know, continuing to use and enable themselves with tools and technologies like Creo to be able to better manage their research operations, to be able to better manage their finances, to be able to grow organically themselves, right? In essence, you know, again, I don't mean to take it from a capitalistic perspective, right? But if you want to grow organically within your research operations, you know, equipping yourself with tools and technology to help drive that growth is, in my opinion, very, very critical for that growth. So, and that will allow you to grow both, whether it be within your existing research site location or to grow different satellite sites as you grow as a single site yourself. And we have seen that time and time again here within Creo as we've have enabled sites for many years.
So following up on that, we have a question here that I think kind of works really hand in hand with what you just mentioned. Earlier you were talking about one of the biggest challenges is sites. They're kind of sometimes they're drowning in the sponsor provided technology, right? And you just mentioned, providing Creo to sites. So to be a devil's advocate here, how is that different, right? How is sponsor providing Creo different than that drowning in technology we're talking about?
Yeah, and I would say that what we're finding with sponsors who are stepping up and stepping into and saying, hey, I want to equip, I want to help equip sites with tech for that is, of course, Creo has a large footprint in research sites. So of course, tapping into already those high performing sites that are Creo customers, sponsors can already tap into that because they've been trained, they've been using the system, they're already ready to go. For sites that are not Creo customers, right? They get introduced and provided with tools and tech that are not intended to be single-use technology, right? They can continue to use that application, the Creo application, beyond that one particular study, which maybe that particular sponsor might be, covering the costs associated with that particular usage. Because at the end of the day, the hope and the goal is that sites that are non-Creo customers will actually see the value of Creo beyond just that one particular thing, because it does Creo allows for, which I didn't even spend time getting into, but the whole aspects of scheduling patients, reaching out to patients, coordinating their next visits, managing all the finance aspects of that, translating the CTA or the clinical trial agreement into budgets and finance. And then there's the whole e-source piece and e-reg and all the other elements that make this application a tool that is far beyond the singular aspect of that particular clinical trial protocol. And admittedly, right, some sites may not embrace that and may not want that beyond the study, but at the end of the day, the idea is that, equipping them with this, and paid for by the sponsor for that particular study will create some of the aspects of a desire to use that system beyond just that one single use.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I think we've got time just to hit one more question here, but again, a reminder to our audience members, we didn't have a chance to get to your question. There will be a chance for follow-up after the webinar today. This last question here coming from the audience was asking about, as more sponsors are doing sole source trials, is there a need to then have a separate EDC and e-source system, or is there room for combination?
Well, like I briefly touched on, Creo recognizes and realizes that certainly the larger sponsor pharma biotech organizations have created and embraced certain EDC solutions within their own organizations and have built teams and processes and all sorts of downstream data analytics and activities with that. And so that's really where creating that EDC API that I talked about and allowing the data to automatically flow, if you will, from Creo site source system into downstream target systems at the sponsor. So that's one part of it. The other part too is that, as I mentioned, Creo has both one system, right, one source. And so we provide the tech for sites for them to capture and collect all the needed data. But at the same time, we also have, a database environment that allows for reviewer, which provides for that de-identified view of data as well, which allows sponsors, pharma, biotech, et cetera, to be able to review those data, query those data, medically code those data, if that should be an option that they would be interested in doing too. So we want to be able to offer optionality at the end of the day, right? And essentially enabling that to occur. So in the examples I gave around the sole sourcing and single sourcing, where I've got a site network, or a bunch of various aspects of that, that certainly is a model that really lends itself well to that. Or if a pharma company, right, is not using a bespoke downstream EDC system too, the power of pulling that through is certainly something to consider as well.
Okay, excellent, Jonathan. Thank you so much for that. Thank you to our audience members who sent in your questions. We really appreciate your participation. As I've been saying, if you have any further questions, if we couldn't attend to your questions, or of course, if you're someone who's watching the recorded version of this webinar, you can get in touch with the team at Creo using the contact info on screen. We've got Jonathan's email right there. Feel free to reach out and have a chance to follow up with you after the webinar and keep the conversation going. I do thank everyone once again for participating. If you are attending via GoToWebinar, make sure to, again, download that excellent Creo ebook available under the handouts tab before you exit out here today. And I've added a link to the chat box where you'll be able to view the recording of this event. You can, of course, share this link with your colleagues so that they may register to view it as well. And you'll also be receiving a follow-up email from XTalks with access to the recording. And after we wrap things up here, a survey window will appear on your screen. Your participation in this survey is always appreciated, as it helps us to improve our webinars. Just a note for those of you who are watching on LinkedIn Live, we encourage you to create an account on xtalks.com and register for this event, which will then not only give you access to today's recording, but to our entire library of webinars and other free content. Now, at this point, I'd just like to thank Jonathan again for your excellent presentation. We really appreciate your time here today. We hope our audience found this insightful and informative, and we wish you all a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.